It's the year 2013, and clearly black people haven't learned a thing from the previous 500 years in America. Everyone is talking about the racial profiling of black shoppers at the outrageously overpriced retail store Barney's, New York. It's the kind of grotesque establishment where fools part with their money and merrily spend $1,000 for a watch and $2,000 for a handbag. This year there have been several instances where black shoppers, totally oblivious to the fact that we are the poorest people in America and the world, waltz into Barney's with their ridiculous, dull-witted stares and happily deposit their life savings with non-black merchants for an item only worth a fractional percentage of what they're selling it for. My only complaint about these arrests of black customers at Barney's is that they didn't get every other black person who dared to venture into their establishment and fill the pockets of people who revile them. So let's take a look at these pathetic patrons of prejudicial trinket peddlers. The first report came about a 19-year-old named Treyon Christian, and like most people whose Neanderthal parents lacked the basic intelligence to give their child an actual name with a meaning, Treyon is a brainless consumer. He doesn't have much money, but what little he does have he uses in a futile attempt to boost his low self-esteem and try to buy his self-worth by engaging in material therapy. Now this buffoon is a college student with a part-time job. Considering the black male unemployment rate for black teens usually hovers around 60%, you would think he would feel extra lucky and do like his white and Asian counterparts and use his savings to start his own enterprise. But that's not the way it works in bastard Babyville. Treyon saved up his money from his part-time job, and after buying 2 tight jeans to sag in, he apparently decided a $350 belt would be the perfect accessory to go along with his homo thug outfit. So off he went to Barney's to buy a Salvatore Ferragamo designer belt. After the purchase, he was approached by plainclothes cops who accused him of fraud. Chase Bank confirmed the card Treyon used to pay for the belt with was indeed his, and the police had to let him go. Treyon says he immediately went back to the store to return the belt, saying he will never shop at Barney's again. The real question, however, is why was this numbskull shopping there in the first place? The belt he was buying was totally out of proportion to his income. Obviously, he stays with his parents, and with this amount of gross financial irresponsibility, he'll be living with them for the rest of his life. But they probably deserve it, because they were the ones who taught and raised this lout to think that these reckless buying habits are acceptable, and at a time in his life when he's supposed to be developing character traits to be a man, an independent man, he is instead acting like a teenager on a shopping spree. Booker T. Washington said, "Black people work for what they want and beg for what they need," and there's no more a perfect illustration of this than Treyon Christian. But this shopping Sambo wouldn't be the last lesson in socioeconomics to emerge from Barney's in New York. Meet Kayla Phillips. Like Treyon, she's also a college student going to school for nursing. She's also a single mother to boot who's several months pregnant when she went into Barney's. Now, in these tough economic times, money is tight for everyone, and in the case of someone like Kayla, she's got to pinch every penny she can, right? Well, apparently not, because Kayla, when she's not spending her money purchasing cartoonish hair weaves that would make Rachel Jantel proud, she apparently has a taste for expensive handbags, and this time she had her eye on a $2,500 suede purse by Celine. Now, if you all want to know why black children have the lowest rate of literacy and the highest rate of poverty, just take a look at this bloated mammy with a hair hat. Her kids won't have any type of financial foundation to build off of because this ignorant ghetto troglodyte squandered it all on things she thought were more important than her children's futures. You can't blame this on the baby daddy. Now, if you're wondering how Kayla came into so much money, it wasn't from sound financial planning. Like most single mothers sponging off the system, she wouldn't have a dime to her name if it wasn't for the income tax return racket. Based on the amount she received, she likely got the Earned Income Tax Credit or Child Tax Credit or both. So even though she paid nothing in taxes, Barack Obama and the rest of the con men in government have taken money from the working black population so it can be handed over to Kayla and the rest of the hood rats. And just like her and her kind waste the child support money they receive and it never goes to help the children, these selfish beasts also spit on the money forcibly taken from actual working people so they can buy toys.
Good, tell me what happened.
I came to Barney's in February, mid-February, to purchase a Celine bag for $2,500. I used my debit card. It went through. I showed my ID. Then I was walking to the train station on 59th and Lexington, where I was attacked by 4 police officers, 4 undercovers.
Now you can just look at her face and see the kind of person you're dealing with. She spent her whole short adult life being a drain on society, and she's just getting warm. Kayla went to Barney's and bought the Celine purse. After she left, she was stopped down the block right before she could get on the subway. Like Trayon, she was accused of card fraud without any evidence, and like Trayon, she had to be let go. Both Trayon and Kayla are suing Barney's and the New York Police Department. Now, I personally hope they get millions and that the New York Police Department fires the cops and Barney's goes out of business, but I understand this is being unrealistic. So I guess what I will instead hope for is that Trayon and Kayla get nothing. That's right. I hope they don't get anything except the notoriety of being 2 buck-dancing slaves who toil all the day long so they could go to a store and pay the rent of the people who cheerfully put them in jail. And I hope that their humiliating experience serves as a cautionary tale to every other black person in New York and around the country that being the most foolish consumers on earth is nothing to be proud of or defended. I took a trip to Harlem, and I can tell you it's a disgusting mess. In the middle of the financial mecca of the world, Manhattan Island, Harlem sticks out like a dead mouse on a pizza. The place that nurtured the Harlem Renaissance and made Malcolm X a household name is thought of among black people around America as an enclave of black economic community. But in reality, that ideal of Harlem is just nostalgia. The reality of today is that black people are just squatters in Harlem. I traveled those streets, and all the stores are owned by Arabs and Indians, and of course, whites. Black people own practically nothing of significance in Harlem anymore. And the reason for this is because the Asians and the Indians and whites use their money to invest in Harlem. Meanwhile, the blacks take their money and swiftly deposit the entire truckload of it with non-black people who can't stand your guts and don't even want your money. And it's not like it was a secret before you walked into their store. Black people go into businesses like Barney's, Macy's, and Saks Fifth Avenue with the attitude that, I don't care if they don't want me in their store. I'm gonna shop here anyway. And there are no other people on the planet who have this ignorant ideology that you will demand to empower people who hate you. There are black businesses in New York City, but people like Trayon and Kayla Phillips don't care about those. You have to remember, slaves always believed that white ice is colder. So if Barney's moved to a cardboard box under a bridge, people like Kayla Phillips would make sure they didn't stay under that bridge very long, because she would make sure that every dime of her money went to get them out from under there. This is what happened to black economic empowerment in America. This is the reason less than 1% of black people own a business. This is the reason that as soon as a black man gets some money, he avoids every black woman he sees. This is the reason that your smart black college students only associate with non-black students. This is the reason I have no respect for the civil rights generation who taught and reared the following generations that trying to integrate non-black institutions was more important than life itself. And As if right on cue, the civil rights generation showed up to let us all see that they're still holding on to the ludicrous notion that someday they can force the children of their oppressors to accept us. Reverend Al Sharpton called a press conference to say that he had summoned a meeting with none other than the CEO of Barney's New York, Mark Lee. Mark Lee says that Barney's internal investigation has determined that their store employees didn't call the police at all, and he's blaming the entire fiasco on the NYPD. The NYPD is pointing the finger back at Barney's, saying that police don't come out unless someone calls them first. Stop and frisk would seem to refute that notion, but in any case, the real issue is what exactly is it that Reverend Al hopes to accomplish? Is his goal to make New York safe for black customers to splurge every dime they make with non-black merchants? Is he trying to defend the right of single mammies to keep buying their hair weaves from Asians and their handbags from Anglos while black businesses can't stay open because their customers are patronizing everyone except them? Instead of trying to demand a change in behavior from white stores, why didn't Reverend Sharpton demand a change in behavior from black consumers? Why didn't he call a press conference and say that this should mark the beginning of a black renaissance of black group economics? Why didn't he call to the podium black-owned stores in the New York area and tell people that we should boycott Barney's, like he says boycott everything else, and return to spending our money with our own people who will give us the respect and dignity we deserve? Instead of trying to integrate with Barney's, why didn't he demand we integrate with ourselves? So if you're going to hold a press conference about black consumers, why go to Barney's? Why didn't he go to J.P. Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, or the Small Business Administration, or any host of other financial institutions, and tell them that in light of our horrendous treatment at the hand of white stores like Macy's and Barney's, we want these lending institutions to begin making investments into black people who want to start their own high-end stores? Why can't we do that instead? But there are two reasons we can't do that. Number one, most older blacks don't consider it valuable unless a white person owns it. And number two, most black consumers don't consider it valuable unless white people own it. Therefore, Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, and anyone else who would consider such an investment is fully aware that black people don't value black businesses, so they would worry there won't be a customer base to gain a return on their investment. I can't tell you if they would be right about that, but what I can tell you is that there is enough doubt that no one feels they can make a case that they should. Not even the President of the United States. The situation at Barney's and other retailers in New York of arresting the very black people who want to be their customers illustrates that integration is a farce. Wasting money trying to buy white acceptance has been adopted by the current generation just like it was by their parents and grandparents, and that the only solution is black group economics. But the people who need it most would rather try to force non-black people to take our money, and they will punch you in the face if you try to stop them.